Have you ever wondered what would happen if Chris Pratt were to play the Punisher instead of Star-Lord? Well, wonder no more. We are talking The Terminal List. Now, this is actually based on a series of novels by author Jack Carr, and it stars Chris Pratt as a character called Reece. And very much like the Netflix Punisher series, it pretty much is a tale of revenge against a man who is wronged, and he wants revenge over those people who he feels wronged him. It really does play like a Punisher series. What is this story? Well, I'm going to be vague to obviously avoid spoilers, but suffice to say, Chris Pratt plays a Navy SEAL commander called Reece. And he's on a mission at the beginning of the movie that goes wrong, and he ultimately is the only survivor in it. And he has obviously massive kind of survivor's guilt. He seems to be suffering with some type of disorder, possibly by, caused by his time as a soldier. But he learns there may well be a conspiracy that has kind of put his men in danger, maybe even his family, and maybe even affects his health as well. And he's up to Chris Pratt's character Reece to try and track down those who he feels responsible, which leaves him to ever bigger fish to fry. Now, that's a vague kind of plot synopsis there, because obviously I don't want to spoil any of the surprises for you. Let's talk about what I think works in this series. So, Amazon seems to be in the space now of having these kind of military-style kind of series. They obviously did the Jack Reacher series, and this kind of follows a kind of a similar template. Obviously, it feels very much like it's based on a novel, as was Reacher, and of course they both were. And it really does feel like this. It feels like a kind of a novel, the kind of thing you'd pick up, the dads would pick up in the airport to kind of read on a plane, that kind of thing. Now, Chris Pratt obviously is a legitimate kind of like film star, movie star. So, but he is front and center in this kind of series. He is the kind of the main character. I know that there's some kind of A-list actors who do little bit parts here and there in TV shows, but he is the kind of the main character in this one. And just like Reacher, this is a very, very well-produced series. I'm going to call it a movie, I expect, a couple of times, but it is a series. Yeah, and it's very, very well produced with breathtaking kind of action sequences that are kind of like peppered throughout the series, and some really kind of standout moments as well. One of the things I think really kind of sets this one apart, really, I think from a lot of these, and I guess it's similar to Reacher in some ways, was the kind of the brutal violence in this movie. It doesn't kind of shy away from the violence. And with this one, I would say maybe the difference between this and like Reacher, for example, is the character is definitely more flawed. I think Chris Pratt's Reece character is certainly more flawed with the Reacher character. Well, I didn't review Reacher, Tom did for the channel, but I liked it, but it was kind of, I felt like the Reacher character was just too, he was just unbelievable as a real character. Whilst I did feel that Chris Pratt's character was certainly more of a believable and kind of flawed human being, albeit he's a super warrior and everything that you'd expect in a series like this. But one of the things that struck me was he does kind of really sit on the knife edge about is he a good guy or a bad guy, because although he feels like he has wronged, the way he kind of goes about correcting this is pretty brutal, and at times he maybe even crosses the line a few times, I will say, and puts people in harm's way or directly kind of kills people. There's, for example, I won't tell the context, but there's a sequence, for example, where there is simply a paid kind of like guard, I guess you would say, who is just doing his job, and he had got he dropped his weapon, got his hands up, and Chris Pratt shoots him dead, because he's in the way. So he's certainly not a good guy, even though his kind of, he feels like he's on doing the moral thing by correcting wrongs that are done to him. I'm not going to say what they are, of course. So yeah, it certainly makes it for an uncomfortable watching. This is kind of why I think the parallels with the Punisher are so apt, because he's certainly an anti-hero in this. His methods definitely aren't necessarily kind of heroic. But I think, the difference maybe between Chris Pratt versus like the John Bernthal's Punisher series or the Reacher series, that I think Chris Pratt gives a little bit more of an everyman feel to it than the other two, I think, and has a little bit more kind of vulnerability, constantly kind of like being distracted by thinking about his family, for example, and stuff like that. One aspect I did like was the character played by Constance Wu as a tenacious reporter who isn't annoying. I think her character arc is actually quite good. And then it kind of goes into this, we have all these different sort of factions that are wanting to kind of get their own agenda, be it the media, be it the FBI, be it our kind of our bad guys, and obviously Reece himself. So we have this kind of thing where we're coming at this from a few different angles, which I quite appreciated. It's got an excellent kind of supporting cast. You know, you've got many kind of recognisable names here. You've got Janine Triplehorn, you've got Taylor Kirsch, you've got Sean Gunn, a few other kind of people that you'll kind of recognise from various kind of movies and kind of TV shows. So a pretty decent cast here, and it looks like it's a kind of quite a high budget. And one of the things that, you know, that I enjoyed about this movie, as the series progresses, you know, there's always a bigger fish to fry. You know, you think he's got to kind of like the end of the kind of the line of the people that he wants to kind of talk to, yet we learn that there's a kind of someone else involved who's like further up the kind of the food chain and things like this. To me, the actual the peak of this series was in the kind of, I think the middle episodes here, where he's kind of going against this kind of head of this kind of military contract. So I think to me that was the peak of this series. You know, there are a couple of episodes where it kind of slows down. There's a sequence where he's being chased by other kind of seals and things, which is pretty much the woods the whole episode. It's a little bit of a slower episode, but yeah, there's some good kind of drama in it. I think the acting's all very good. It's all kind of like, you know, high octane stuff, but with a great production value. What didn't work for me? There are some kind of story elements here that I did feel really reek of that kind of based on a novel feel. Elements here that I didn't think were particularly kind of realistic. Sometimes it goes a little bit too kind of in the kind of like let's have a kind of a winding kind of story path because this is what kind of novels do, and it thinks, I don't know if I quite believe all of this is a realistic kind of setup, to be honest. With certain characters, again, I'm trying to be vague here, certain characters' motivation, things like this. One of the things that really bothered me is there's a story element here that I thought this is going to be so typical if it does this. It'll be such a kind of cliche thing to do if it ends up doing this. And for literally the whole series, I didn't think it was going to do it. And literally, in the last episode, literally in the last couple of scenes, it does it. I'm thinking, oh, I really wish it hadn't done that, because that was so obvious, so typical of what kind of like the melodrama that sometimes these kind of series fall into. And that's just one example. I do think this series is a little bit over melodramatic at times, to be honest with you. I think it does kind of lean a little bit too much on some kind of cliches. Like the one I've vaguely kind of mentioned there, I think you probably know what I'm talking about when you kind of see it. Things maybe happen a little bit too easily at times for our characters. There's certain kind of contacts that just seem to be in the right place at the kind of the right time, who have certain kind of like resources. There does seem to be no kind of question about kind of how financially this is kind of going on and things like this. There are questions that are unanswered. So yeah, it's not the particular. I don't think it makes complete kind of sense in that respect. It's a thrilling kind of ride. Don't get me wrong. It's an enjoyable kind of show if you can kind of like not worry about the kind of the small stuff to a certain degree. But if you think about it too hard, I don't know if it all completely kind of slots into place. And I think maybe Chris Pratt's character, you know, is maybe a little bit too lucky at times, or maybe too skilled at times compared to those around him. Overall though, I've got to say I did enjoy this series a lot. It was a lot of fun. It wasn't one that I'd really heard much about prior to kind of watching it, but you know, I've enjoyed Chris Pratt's work in, you know, the Guardians movies and Jurassic World and all that. So I thought I'd check it out, and yeah, I was pleased that I did. Yeah, it's kind of like, It's very much what you think. It's very much a kind of espionage, kind of action, style kind of thriller series. It's not going to kind of surprise you, I don't think. But what you do get is a solid entertainment with a somewhat of a kind of predictable kind of full momentum. But nonetheless, it's solidly made, solidly acted, and it looks like it's had some money put into it. So I want to give this one a 7 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.